Hey guys, and welcome to the final review for the final season of Game of Thrones, looking at Episode 6, The Iron Throne. Okay, there's quite a bit to get to here, so let me just start by saying that the very first reaction I had when this episode ended was that it was actually pretty good, especially relative to the rest of this season, which unfortunately for me, didn't live up to how good the series was overall, especially in the early seasons. And while I wanted some kind of final twist at the very end to make things more interesting, it actually felt pretty good seeing the two things I wanted most coming true, and that was the Targaryens losing power and the Stark children getting a happy ending. That being said, as with the rest of this season, there were some story and character issues I had. But before I talk about that, let's get to my top 5 moments of the night, starting at number 5 with Dany's victory speech to the Unsullied and Dothraki. This scene was beautifully shot, especially with that visual of Dany walking forward as Drogon spread his wings in the back. And the speech she delivered definitely got the message across that she needed to be stopped. But I also found myself a bit disappointed in this scene with Daenerys as a character. To me, this whole idea of ridding the world of tyrants really is delusional. If you've been watching my reviews, you know I've been arguing that Dany is not a mad queen, but instead just has a warped worldview because of her experiences. And to be honest, I thought her talking about ridding the world of tyrants earlier in this season was just a grandiose claim to inspire rather than a practical goal she had. To me, her real mission all her life was to reclaim the Iron Throne, at first for her brother and then for herself. She even stayed behind in Slaver's Bay to rule in Meereen so that once she conquered Westeros, she would know how to be a queen. I always thought that this was her ultimate goal, and this intense focus was part of the reason I thought of her as Aegon the Conqueror, who founded the kingdom. Aegon had ample opportunities to go east and conquer the lands of his ancestors, but made the conscious choice of abandoning the east in favor of conquering and ruling Westeros. I thought that was Dany's plan as well, but now all of a sudden, she doesn't want to rule, but instead wants to spend her life conquering the world. This really is an insane idea, and while she still is nowhere near the level of incompetence and madness of her father, even I have to admit she does seem to have lost her grasp on reality. For the fourth best moment of the night, I've chosen the death of Daenerys Targaryen in the throne room of the Red Keep. Another beautifully shot scene, and I think like many book readers, as soon as I realized Jon stabbed Dany, I immediately thought of the story of Azor Ahai, the great hero from the east Melisandre thought Stannis was, who arose during a time of darkness and had to kill his wife Nissa in order to save humanity. I thought this was an excellent way to kill her, as Jon, at least in my mind, had now linked the 3 related hero stories from the past, having journeyed north with a special sword and companions like the last hero, was revealed to be a secret Targaryen and rightful heir to become the prince who was promised, and now killed the woman he loved to save the people like Azor Ahai. At the number 3 spot, I've gone with the Great Council in the Dragon Pit of King's Landing. Although there were some issues with this scene I'll get into later, I really enjoyed seeing the remaining Great Lords discussing the future of the realm. But for me there were 2 big moments in this scene that I absolutely loved. The first was Sansa refusing to give up power and claiming the North as an independent kingdom. Now let me be clear about something. If we're talking about what is in the best interest of the realm as a whole, then I think this was an absolutely terrible and incredibly selfish decision by Sansa. I don't think it was a coincidence that the first shot after she said this was of Yara Greyjoy of the Iron Islands and the Prince of Dorne. Both those realms have just as much right to independence as the North, and in the long run, this will no doubt cause massive political problems, and possibly even another civil war when they try to reclaim their independence. On top of that, the North already gave up their sovereignty when Jon knelt to Daenerys. How much more would they have been willing to accept it if Bran Stark, the eldest living son of their beloved Ned, was in power? I also think the reason Bran said yes to her is because he knows just how ruthless Sansa has become, and that standing in her way could only lead to more war. And while the political nightmare this will create may lead to violence in the future, at least a short-term peace gives Bran time to try other avenues towards appeasing the other realms. But even though I think this was a really bad development for Westeros, I absolutely loved this moment, because it solidified what I've thought about Sansa for the past 2 seasons, and that she is a true queen in every sense of the word. That doesn't mean she's a good person, or a bad one, but that like any authoritarian monarch, she is singularly focused on increasing and maintaining her own power at any cost. Sure, declaring independence is bad for the 7 kingdoms, but it's good for her and the North. After all, the North didn't threaten or scheme their way into independence. King Bran granted it, meaning that when the Iron Islands and Dorne start making trouble, their anger will be directed at King's Landing rather than the Northern Kingdom. In addition, if a civil war breaks out later on, the North can stay out of it and allow the 6 kingdoms to weaken themselves, so Sansa can expand their influence and possibly even their territory. Because of her strategic political mind and proven administrative skills, I think Sansa will be a harsh but excellent queen, and be remembered as one of their best leaders, like Theon Stark the Hungry Wolf and Cregan Stark the Old Man of the North. The other big moment I loved in this scene was Bran becoming king of the Six Kingdoms. Although on the surface, this seems like a boring, uninspired ending, as Bran with his special powers and lack of carnal desires make him the wisest person in the world, meaning he will rule as some sort of infallible god king who makes the land prosper, keeps the peace, and knows exactly what to do at all times. But I didn't see it this way at all. To me, this moment had much more sinister implications, as Bran made it perfectly clear he knew exactly what was going to happen, and was more than ready to accept the position as king. To me, this said that there was a far larger and deeper game being played here, and brought a million new possibilities about who exactly is the Three-Eyed Raven. What was his real plan? And was it really necessary to reveal Jon's past? Or was it a strategic move in the Game of Thrones to make Dany go mad so she ended up dead and Jon in exile, therefore clearing the path for Bran to take power? So many new possibilities that will hopefully be explored in the books if they go in this same direction. Moving on to the number 2 spot for the night, I've chosen Arya Stark sailing into the Sunset Sea to explore the uncharted waters of the West. Another moment linking themselves to the books, this immediately made me think of Alyssa Farman, the great Westerosi explorer from decades earlier, who sailed into the West and discovered 3 small islands she named Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya. Some stories even claim Alyssa sailed all the way around the world and ended up in Ashai in the Far East, which may hint at Arya's future. If you want to know more about Alyssa Farman, check out the link at the end of this video and in the description below, where you can see the video I made about her life. At the number 1 spot, and for me the best moment of the night, was the ending for Jon Snow as he reunited with Ghost and Tormund before setting off to resettle the free folk beyond the Wall. As much as I would have liked to see Jon end up in a position of power in the south, the truth is it likely would have made him miserable, especially since it seems like what he really wanted was to be free of all the responsibilities thrust upon him. So seeing him smirk a little bit as the doors shut behind him and he rode off into the north, to me confirmed that in the end he was happy, which is the heart of what I really wanted for my favorite character. On top of that, I loved his long-awaited reunion with Ghost, and him riding off into the wild alongside Tormund Giantsbane, which reminded me of the conversation between Ned and Robert in Season 1, where they daydreamed about riding off together to live free as adventurers, and since Jon is so much like Ned, this seemed like both of their dreams coming true. I'm also not sure Jon will ever come back to the Night's Watch. I think there's a good chance he settles with the Free Folk and eventually takes a wife and has a family, maybe even becoming king beyond the Wall. Now, for the best kill of the night, there's really only one choice, and that's Dany's death in the throne room and its similarities to Azor Ahai killing Nissa. As for the best line of the episode, that goes to the possible mastermind behind it all, Bran the Broken, who after being asked if he would accept the crown, replied coolly, "Why do you think I came all this way?" Moving on to my criticisms for the episode. Unfortunately, there were quite a few, but this was by no means the worst episode of this season in my opinion. And like I said, overall I still managed to enjoy this one despite its flaws. The first of which is small and relatively insignificant, I will admit. But I was a bit disappointed they went with the Iron Throne for the title of this episode, rather than A Dream of Spring, which is George R.R. Martin's planned title for the last book of the series, and would have fit perfectly well with the theme of this episode, even better I think than the title they chose. Aside from that, a more serious criticism I had was with Drogon sparing Jon and melting the Iron Throne. To me, this didn't make any sense, as it seemed to be ascribing a level of intelligence to the dragons that they had not previously established. They had mentioned that the dragons are smart, but we'd never seen them express this level of complex thought before. Also, it seemed like Jon was being spared because he was a Targaryen, even though in the books there was no such hesitation for dragons, who quite readily killed other Targaryens in the past. And while they might have changed it for the show, it seems like a needless change made to serve this one scene rather than the series as a whole. Another problem I had was with the ever-changing concept of breaking the wheel. This never made sense to me, not when Dany said it the first time and not when Tyrion said it the last time. Dany's idea of breaking the wheel was taking away the independence of others to establish herself as an absolute monarch, which is already a ridiculous way to describe breaking the wheel. But then Tyrion makes it even more absurd by saying that what she really meant was establishing an elective monarchy where the nobility have more power and the non-Targaryen ruler has less. No, Tyrion, this is nowhere near what she wanted, and that is not what she meant by breaking the wheel. And I sincerely hope he understood that, and only said it to appease Grey Worm. Speaking of which, I thought it absolutely insane that Grey Worm, the Unsullied, and the Dothraki were so eager to make peace after the death of their beloved queen. The fact they arrested Jon and didn't execute him immediately, to me was completely unrealistic. Both these groups were supposed to be absolutely loyal to her, yet as soon as she was betrayed and killed, turned their backs, accepted a minor punishment for the offender, and sailed away to live new lives. It would have been one thing if they didn't have possession of Jon Snow and had to negotiate for justice as they had no choice. But they had both Jon and Tyrion in their possession and could have killed them easily and maybe even sailed off before the Lords of Westeros could gather together. But from what I can tell, they didn't in order to avoid more fighting. The Unsullied and Dothraki, who were basically born for warfare and were extremely loyal, did not avenge their queen because they were afraid of a fight. To me, this was a really bad moment and possibly the worst in the entire episode. Also, where did the Dothraki go? We saw the Unsullied sailing off, but there was no explanation for what happened to the Horse Lords, who, let's not forget, were made blood riders to Dany and therefore should have been her most loyal servants. On top of all that, the writing in general in this episode, especially the dialogue, I felt was quite poor. So when thinking about an overall score, I'm gonna have to go with a 7 out of 10. Not perfect by any means, but reasonably enjoyable. As for the season as a whole, I have to admit I'm fairly disappointed. I had high hopes for this final season, and thought they would give it their all. And while the music, costumes, direction, cinematography, and acting were all top tier, the writing really was quite poor. And unfortunately, that lowers the score quite a bit. So in the end, I'm gonna give this season the same score I gave the final episode, and go with a 7 out of 10. Although I was disappointed with the storyline, I can't ignore all the moments I did enjoy and the raw emotion they pulled out of me in every episode. And while the series may not have ended perfectly, I think it's important to recognize what a monumental achievement this show was overall, and how in many ways it changed the landscape of television and the fantasy genre. And for those who wanted more from the story, there's always the books to satisfy that craving. So that's it, guys. After 8 seasons, we're at the end of the road for this show, but not for this world as a whole, because of the many spin-off shows and prequels currently in the works. So it's entirely possible that we'll be back in a few months or years, once again diving into the complexities of this world. But before I wrap up for now, I just wanted to say a thank you to all those who have been with me throughout this journey, watching my videos and reviews. Your support is very much appreciated, and remember that this channel will continue to make videos about the A Song of Ice and Fire books, as well as other series like Lord of the Rings, the MCU, Star Trek, Star Wars, The Wheel of Time, and others. And like always, don't forget to check out the episode recap already out and The Thrones Effect, available in all formats on Amazon. Take care everyone, and rest easy. For now, our watch is ended. Love Game of Thrones? Then be sure to check out the new book, The Thrones Effect, written by a number of respected A Song of Ice and Fire YouTubers, including GOT Academy, Because Geek, Secrets of the Citadel, Grey Area, Ideas of Ice and Fire, History of Westeros, and Smokescreen, with Chapter 5, titled Eye of the Beholder, written by CivilizationEx, exploring the various ways the characters and story can be interpreted, as well as how the audience reacted to their decisions. If interested, click on the link in the description box below, where The Thrones Effect is available as a physical copy, ebook, and audiobook. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Mamoru, the obscured hermit alchemist, Tamika the Black Wolf, Belligerent Man, and Uther Lightbringer. If you'd like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to see more.